G'day. It's time to down your unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else in this big wide world of Warhammer. My name is Adam Camilleri, and welcome to 204 episodes of the Art of War Down Under podcast. We are doing a State of the Superfaction episode for Xenos, and I'm going to be doing these in a compilation pretty much over the next couple of weeks and or months, doing all the superfactions in the game, kind of updating their feel and their builds and their archetypes and what is good and bad about them in this kind of new refreshed 10.5 game. The game and the metrics has changed more than significantly, and due to that, we want to get our eye in on what is working, what is not working, and what the future looks like for many of our said factions. And by when it's all said and done, hopefully you guys have an idea of what the entirety of the meta looks like from the perspective of experts of said faction. To that end, I have enlisted 4 experts to be coming on for this episode that you're listening to right now. I've got experts for Necrons, Votann, what's the other ones? The other ones, Tau and Orks. And you'll be hearing 4 segments with a said expert for the rest of this episode. The first up, though, we have a terror from the West Coast. He's recently won the BAO this year and went very deep at LVO, also wielding and playing with one of the most fair and face-up factions that we've had in 10th edition, that being the Leagues of Votann. His name's Junior Aflihi. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, mate.
Close enough. It's of Jahi.
Jahi, apologies, mate. Yeah, Australian vernacular, never that strong. But you're going to be joining us to talk about the Votann, and which you've been an absolute monster with. Undisputably one of the best in the world with the Short Kings. But yeah, welcome to the show, mate. Is there anything you'd like to plug or mention before we kick off?
No, I'm just happy to be here and ready to give my insight on the leagues.
Fan-freaking-tastic, my dude. Of course, there will be a part 2 to each one of these segments. So me and Junior and myself are going to be recording about 20-25 minutes of here. We're just going to be talking about hot takes on how they are doing in the changes to 10.5, current best archetypes and fringe archetypes, units to watch and detachments to watch. Of course, some detachments on their some armies on their one detachment. Where the skill ceiling and the skill floor is for said faction if someone wants to pick them up in 10.5, and then the enjoyment play or the enjoyment to play against, and we give that perspective as well. And then, of course, over part 2, we're going to be talking about good and bad matchups, what they're strong into, what they're not strong into, and why. And we'll be unpacking that over there. If you want to get that Art of War Down Under over on Patreon, and you know all that stuff by now. All right, my dude. So Votann, on the surface level in 10.5, didn't really get any major adjustments to their actual rules, did they?
Pretty much stayed the same across the board. So.
But with a new freaking unit, baby, which I played against on the weekend, and I was very impressed. The Jaegers is pretty much the only real change that we're going to be kind of talking about from 10 to 10.5, yeah?
Yep. The Jaegers add a new dynamic to the Leagues of Votann that we didn't have. And what was that?
Do you have 30 of them already?
No, I have 20.
20 is a good number. I think actually now that I played against them, please let me know if you agree. I think 20 is 10 or 20 is the perfect number. I think 30 is actually possibly 1, 2.
A good starting point where I'm not giving up too much of the other units, but I'm down to try 20 here pretty soon.
In saying that, the points of Votann are like, from an outsider looking in, they seem like they're a bit on a knife edge. Like, if anything significant, the points, like, do you feel like the points right now are pretty good or too high, too low?
No, actually, I feel like they're pretty good. We have about the same amount of units as other armies. So we're not an elite army. We're not something that's going to pack like a ton of units like a horde army. It's again a blessing.
A steal. How do you equip yours? The ones I played against on the weekend had the plasma blades. They were the melee kit out, which I was kind of incredulous that they started 9 inches away from me, went first, and proceeded to charge both a unit of assault intercessors and a unit of scouts, and left me with 1 scout. And I was like, huh. Did not expect that. My scouts don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. I use the plasma blades. I don't
Yep.
think the 0 AP shotguns are worth it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get into combat, for some reason they're AP2 as well. Like
It's
why?
wild. Yeah. And they're a beautiful toughness level as well. I mean, of course, they don't have much of a save, but I mean, you're leaning on the toughness, right?
Yep, just T5, and
Yeah.
that's that's enough for most to stay alive for most armies.
Yeah. After playing against that, the first thing that came into my head was like, holy crap, they're all commandos. They're literally like commandos, all commandos, because they're T5, as orcs are. They start 9 inches away and they freaking punch, man.
Yeah, and especially if they hit something with 2 judgment tokens, you can pop a
Yeah.
CP, and all of a sudden you're AP4.
Correct. That's exactly what he did. And because he had double judgment on the assault intercessors, he just instantly cashed in on the CP boost, which was kind of wild to see that you can just turn 1, go and just like front load all that CP gain. All right. In your mind, there's a couple of different archetypes that have knocked around in 10th edition so far. We've had the double hecaton. Hell, I've seen triple hecaton as well, but I don't think that was the right way to go. But mostly it's been a number of Sagittars and then Hearthguard as the kind of core of the archetype. MSU backed up by a kind of pseudo Terminator equivalent. Is that where you see it as well?
Yep. The build that I have, I run 15 Terminators and just 1 Hecaton. I think Hecatons are worth it, but not in mass. There's people out there running 2 or 3, and that's it's a lot of points that can be used for other units within the army. So
yeah. So if you were to describe to people, what are the best archetypes right now in 10.5?
yep. So you have there's 3 different archetypes that people are using right now. One is just basically thick city, where you just take 30 Hearthguard. You take or 15 Hearthguard in 3 Hecatons. So that's an archetype.
Yep.
There's another one where you take Mass Thunderkin, actually.
Yep.
So for anti-vehicle 2-up, lots of blast shooting. And then there's again the 6 Sagittars. Still not a bad archetype. Like the Sagittars are some of the best units out there for the points.
Mm-hmm.
So people run anywhere from 4 to 6, or 3 to 6, I should say. That's probably the third archetype. So
perfectly said. I don't think I could change anything. There's one that I've played that I was impressed by. So it was no Hecatons, but this was a couple of months ago. It was 6 Sagittars and 663 bikes. And I was super impressed with the bikes, like super impressed with the big units of Pioneers. Is that something you've had luck with as well?
that's actually what I used to run. Like not the 6 Sagittars, but back in 9th, I had the 18 bikes.
Yeah.
The bikes are, I think, one of our staple units. Obviously, you're going to see that in every list, whether you go 3x3 or 3x6. I think 3x3 is perfect because it's 90 points for a unit that scouts. But yeah, if you take a full army of 18 bikes and Sagittars, and then throw in a couple of Jaegers to block off anybody from stopping your scouting, you can have a super aggressive army in somebody's midboard by turn 1.
So a lot has been said that the Votann have a big going second problem. When a lot of people in 10th edition are like very happy to go second, very happy to go first, because they've weighted turn 2 very heavily. But the issue was, right, because like to your point, Pioneers and Sagittars, 2 of your staple units, especially things that they're going to be going out, getting your objectives, getting your tactical cards, they all function off having a scout move. And without the Jaegers to hold space for them and block out people would put their infiltrators, block your scouts, and then immediately move up and wall you in. And so you're saying that moving back to the Jaegers, they've considerably changed the archetype in the fact that they now actually allow these special rules you're playing points for to activate, right?
Absolutely. That's a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely huge. And it's so wild when you think about how much scout the army has, because like the other unit we should probably talk about. How are you finding Zerkers?
I actually run one unit in there. Um, they are a good counterpunch. So
Mm,
like things that don't have invuls in combat, like Chaos Knights, for instance, or even Imperial Knights. Um, if something has a Judgment token on there, you can go up to AP4. They don't have a save. That's our reliable 3 damage unit. We don't have a
mm.
lot of 3 damage in the army, or things like Terminators. So I actually find that the Berserks with the concussion mauls are like you got to have at least one unit to be able to
Mm.
deal with things like that. So
Yeah. And I actually found that one mole launcher was pretty cute to have as well. Like somebody's got a unit of 6 exalted 8 bound, bearing down on your back line, and you're just like, oh, I don't want to have to try and solve this problem right now. Just a little cheeky mole launcher and run away. It's not too
yeah,
bad either.
or Death Guard,
Yeah,
their
dude.
their death shrouds are going to be moving like 2 inches. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I actually copped that on one of my unit at Deathwing Knights this weekend, and I'm like, 3 inches. And
yeah,
then I rolled the 3 on the advance. I'm like, 1 more inch.
yeah, you get 1 inch.
Yuck. It was pretty yuck, mate. All right. So if you had to put your finger on the button right now of what is the current 10.5 best archetype for people to pick up and give a go, what would you describe that list as?
Well, I would say a more balanced list like mine.
I like. Oh, what a surprise!
Yeah,
Shocked.
crazy. Just a little bit of everything. I have basically one Thunderkin squad, a big 6-man unit
Yep.
that'll help deal with any kind of anti-vehicle. I have 3 Sagittars for scouting. I also have three by 3 bikes.
Yep.
Small units that can. They're very fast. Their uppy downy ability is actually pretty good. If you keep them within 6 inches of a board edge, they can pop off, and then if they're out of position, then come back in and in strategic reserves
Mm.
somewhere else. So the I run one Berserk, now one Jaeger squad, one Hecaton, like I said before, with the conversion beamer,
Yep.
and sometimes it doesn't kill anything, but it does stay alive with a 2-up save,
Yep.
toughness 12, 16 wounds. It takes a lot to kill it, especially if it has any kind of cover and armor of
Mm.
contempt. So, um,
I just wish its big gun had one more AP. I'm
uh,
always,
yeah,
I'm always disappointed. Well, I mostly played against Votann when I've been playing guard and or um, the Marines, and it really hates armor contempt. I just wish it had one more AP just on the main gun, just on the big gun. Because AP2 on the big gun, you're like, sure, you got a lot of ignores cover access as well, right?
yep,
But armor contempt is just such a pain in the ass with that gun.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's only strength 10 too, so it's like
Yeah.
really what you're shooting at is like Terminators, hopefully
Yeah.
doing something like that. But I also run a 10-man Hearthguard squad and then a 5-man,
Yep.
and with keeping those guys in deep strike with Einherjar champions, so I can reroll charges if need be. That's
Yep.
a good balanced army. You have answers for a lot of stuff. You have a lot of blast weapons on there for
Hmm.
horde, or you can kill Satan with grim demeanor.
Yeah.
It's a good balanced army. I haven't had a matchup where I'm like overwhelmed by the opponent.
So, what are your characters in that list? So, you got 2 Iron Hit champs for the 2 Hearthguard units. Do you put a Forge or an Iron Master in to attach to the Thunderkin, or are you just having them just in reserve or in the Hecaton?
Oh yeah, I put the Iron Master with them just to. He adds 1 to the hit roll for them,
Yep.
which is nice. So you can actually shoot something that's not judged and still hit on 3s. Um, and then, I mean, he repairs them, which is
Yeah.
nice if you get down
It's
to
nice.
it. But mostly, one cheeky thing that I do is if you're shooting like big last cannon at my squad, like I take the damage on a little ECOG. I'm like, okay, well,
Yep.
you just killed the little dude and not you haven't touched my Thunderkin. So
Mm. What do you take? So, the Thunderkin have been a choice that has either been supremely incredibly strong, or kind of not worth it. What are you seeing about 10.5 that makes you think the Thunderkin are in a good place now?
yeah, so I think with a lot of people moving to transports,
Yep.
vehicles, uh, if you're not judged, uh, the the leagues have a pretty tough time of cracking your transports and whatnot.
Mhm.
So that's where the Thunder can come into play. Wounding things on twos. I think you're going to see a lot of more vehicles in the meta. Like Blood Angels are taking impulsors, or
Yeah,
uh, even Land Raiders. You see Land Raiders everywhere. Grey Knights with their Grandmasters, their Dread Knights.
Dread Knights.
So
Yep.
you're going to see a lot of vehicles in the meta. So being able to wound things on twos, whether you have a Judgment token on there or not, it's pretty huge.
Mm. What is there a list or an archetype in your head that you really want to try to see if it's good in 10.5?
Actually, I want to try. I was thinking about this the other day. um, uh, a Sagittars build, no bikes. Funny
Yep.
enough,
Okay.
but then more squads of Thunderkin to come off the edges.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
so
Yeah.
Sagittars and Thunderkin.
There you go. How many Thunderkin though? Is it like 633 or 63 or 66?
663.
Oof. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I get it. So you come on, kill all their anti-tank, and then they can't like kill the little buzzbox Sagittars that are running around depositing stuff on objectives. And yeah, what? So is that 6 Sagittars or is that 4 or 5 or?
Four
Yeah.
Sagittars
Yeah.
for the points.
That seems to be the number people are coming to now. It was 6, and I've seen 5, and now I never seem to see less than 4 now.
Yeah, I've always run 3, so
There you go.
in my lists. But so I've seen some other people talk about going down to 2 Sagittars.
Yep.
Um, but I think they're just so good for their points, and they're
I do
tough.
too.
So
That's that T10, baby. That
yeah.
T10 is such a breakpoint, man.
Yeah.
It's incredibly strong. All right, moving on. Units to watch. I think we've already covered that. There's only like 6 units in the book, so it's not like there's a huge amount to unpack for this faction.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the skill floor or the skill ceiling for Votann? First and foremost, how long have you been playing Votann? Did you pick them up on release? Was it late 8th edition or was it early 9th edition?
No, yeah, I picked them up right when they were released. I didn't start playing them until I think it was BAO 2 years ago. It was like
Yep.
middle of ninth is when I started playing them. Um, so yeah, I've been playing them for quite a bit. I got best in faction last year.
Nice. So, how hard did you find it to pick up the faction?
Funny enough, like I came from like Blood Angels
Yep.
to Votann, and a lot of their weapon profiles ended up being the same. So the only thing that was really weird was the movement. They're a little bit slower, so I would say it wasn't that hard to pick up this army. Again,
Yep.
there's not that, like you said, there's not that many data sheets. There's like 13, I think,
Yeah.
total. 6 of them are characters. So
Yep.
it's like really you're only playing with like 4 or 5. So
Hmm.
it's the ceiling's pretty. I'm not gonna say it's too low because this is a pretty involved faction when you're trying to maneuver this thing across the board.
Yeah.
But for somebody picking it up, it's quite easy to start and play with them.
Hmm.
So
It. Yeah. It feels kind of Space Marine like in how easy it is to pick up. Like I suppose that's by design by Games Workshop. They want Space Marines to be very accessible to new players, and it feels like it's a very face up play style. Like there's not a lot of jank, right, in Votann, and I think that's one of the people have thrown that out there against Votann, saying this is one of their downsides. But I think it's one of the upsides. It means that you get to play at the best you can with that faction a lot quicker than others. Would
yep.
you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's why I'm trying to make that comparison. So, yeah, it's a very easy army to pick up. And yeah, it's not tricksy like Eldar or Drukhari.
Mm,
we don't have
yeah.
all those moves. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna move here, I'm gonna shoot,
Yep.
and then let's see
I'm
what
gonna
I see what I kill.
move 7 more times. Yeah, yeah. Well, for the Drukhari in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So enjoyment to play. How much joy have you had playing Votann? How fun have they been for you?
Oh God, they've been extremely fun for me. The it was a little weird because I'm more of a melee focused player in
Yep.
my opinion. So going to a shooty faction seemed a little bit, quote unquote, easier to play. But I've been having a ball with these guys. Like, they look great. They're, I think, one of the best looking armies out there. And
Yep.
as far as learning to play the faction, figuring out how to maneuver these guys across the board, that's been a joy to unlock. And then again, using these, I think they're great into pretty much most matchups. So it's you're not having a bad time playing against them or with them.
All right. Last two questions. Favorite unit in the army? Like just your favorite unit. Doesn't have to be the best unit in the faction. But what is your favorite unit in the faction?
Yeah, my favorite unit is actually the Hearthguard. So,
Okay. Yep.
Hearthguard with the Ironhair Champion. That's got to be my favorite unit in general. Because again, I love melee. That's
Yep.
a good source of it. They shoot hard because they have blast on their little grenade launchers. You can either take the Volkite or the plasma gun. I take the
Plasma. Yep.
Volkite, so for all the shots. So they shoot hard. They melee pretty well. And the Ironhair Champion is hilarious. He gives them reroll the charges for free. So again,
Yep.
when you're talking about having not a lot of CP to do stuff, having a free reroll is awesome. And then he does mortal wounds on the charge. So again, that little package of Ironhair Champion with his little Hearthguard, they're great. They've won me a lot of games.
They have the grenade keyword. Yeah, they can throw grenades.
For the Hearthguard, no, they can't.
Okay, never mind. But they got a grenade launcher.
I know, right?
Alaris custodian players wringing their fists right now, shaking their fists at the Sky Gods for having grenade launchers with no grenade keyword. Yeah, much the same. So you brought up another topic, a question I need to add to this compilation. What's the CP management like? Like what stratagems are your bread and butters, are your go-tos? And do you feel like this is a faction that's starved for CP? Like you would use more if you had ability to have more CP, or do you feel like you have enough?
Actually, with the one change that they made on the data slate was they gave us four units that we can mark with double judgment, right?
Yeah.
So if we kill one of those units, we get 3 CP in our next command phase. If we kill them in the first turn, or you get more CP less CP as the game goes along. But usually one of the things I do is I mark something pretty easily to pop the bonus 3 CP. Um, as far as like CP management, because of that, it's been a lot easier to handle. I do use a lot of these stratagems. And so one of the things that with tactical, when you take tactical missions, and you have to discard at the end of the turn if you don't, want to keep that, you gain a CP. That helps out as well. But the go-to stratagems, besides tank shock now that it got better for us,
Yeah.
it's the improving your armor penetration by 1, so the warrior pride for 1 CP. The fallback and shoot and charge is very strong for
Amazing.
Votann.
It's the best version of that strat in the game.
Yeah, and it's 1 CP, great. I do that all the time. So um, the and then there's the and of course void armor, so, or armor of contempt for all you Space Marine players out there. Same thing. So those are the 3 that I use typically for the as far as the Leagues of Votann stratagems. Other than that, you just have your command point rerolls, but that's why I put like Einhard champions in there, so I don't have to reroll charges.
Yep.
And it's helped out a ton.
Excellent. Well, okay, on that note, last thing we're going to do is, where do you see Votann right now in the tier list? So from S tier down to D tier.
So personally, I think they're anywhere from like bottom A tier,
Yep.
somewhere around there.
Yep.
Like again, the army can have the tools to deal with a lot of the armies that a lot of people have seen these tier lists that people have been putting out there. They have the tools to deal with a lot of the stuff that are in the A tier, B tier, just fine. So you just have to, that's where skill comes into play, of course, and reps, knowing what to put into what. So I've been playing this for, again, a year and a half, 2 years. So I've gotten plenty of reps with Votann. So again, it's as long as you get the reps in, I think this is a good solid like A tier. If somebody puts it in top of B tier, I wouldn't disagree because we're not we're not blood angels right now. So
yeah.
But as for 10.5, we have a lot of units to be able to do all the actions that are needed. We have some trash units now to be able to do some actions. So yeah, I would say bottom A, top B.
Nice. Yeah, I have pretty much the same. And on that note, we are out of here. Thank you so much, Junior, for coming on for this part one. I believe we're going to have a lovely gentleman who's very high on the ITC rankings joining us for our Necrons segment up next. So sit tight for that. But Junior, any parting message you'd like to give to the aspiring grudge bearer?
No, just keep on trucking. We got a lot of good units. I like to see people do well with Votann across the world. So I think we have the tools. Just keep on practicing and we'll get there.
Excellent. All right, mate. Thank you so much again for coming on. Sit tight, everybody. Be right back.
It's time to down your unders.
And we are back with our second segment for this beautiful State of the Xenos Superfaction. To that end, I have trawled through the ITC rankings for Necrons, and the lovely gentleman in third place right now, within striking distance of the pole position, Joshua Campbell from the East Coast, hailing from Washington, D.C., I believe, mate?
Yep, that's me. Good old United States, best states, around.
Yep, the best states around. many states of
all of the states, the best of them. Yes. Politics ignored.
Fair. Well, welcome to the show, mate. You're going to be here as our Necrons expert. You're going to be wielding us through their changes in 10.5. But first, any hot takes? How are they doing in 10.5, mate? How do you feel like the Necrons are shaping up?
Oof. Okay, so difficult question to answer because it pains my heart. We have gotten definitely slapped down from, I would say, fundamentally broken as a faction. Truly, I believe that Canoptic Court with 12-inch loan up and reactive move fundamentally broke the games in ways that were not okay. Having the most durable unit in the game, just sitting and going, not acceptable. So beyond that, we've taken some direct hits, I would say, to the mouth. That leads for a lot of internal balance because I think that the Necron Codex as is incredibly internally balanced, and there's a lot of beta builds. And I've been saying this for a while to my personal group, that for every build that you strike down, 2 more shall take its place.
Yes.
We shall hypercrypt around. We'll go awakened. There's even some spicy phalanx builds that are floating around there.
It's been really frustrating to me because I think I called this as an issue when I first started seeing how GW was doing codexes as edition, how they're all siloed into detachments. And I thought the issue was going to be we would come to the Sisters problem that we had in 9th edition, where Sisters had and even Thousand Sons, they had a codex that had so many different sub-factions, but everyone only played Bloody Rose and Cult of Magic. So no one ever actually got to explore the depth of their codex. And I was really worried that Necrons would be the same, because on release you're like, well, you're playing Canoptic Court, right? Unless you're just a meme dreamer who just wants to slap down monoliths 3 inches away, and you should be
that, Laura.
We can't all be that. We can't all do it, and we're never with that. But do it, go for it. But just Canoptic Court was so much better at the winning games of 40k. Not anywhere near as cool, but winning games than everybody else. So I was just worried that no other detachment would ever get a chance to shine. And so you're saying there's a lot of stuff starting to rear up. That's super exciting.
Yeah, no, like I said, unironically, it's flared a lot of new life into the list building aspect of the game. I think we still get hemmed in some certain problems of certain units are very good and you can only take so many of them. The Nightbringer may be a Chad, but he does just die randomly to like nothing, if you know what I mean, right? And then
Does yours? Because the ones
Yeah.
I play against will not die. They will not freaking die. And then the little bastard on the base just runs around a corner, regens for 2 turns, and comes back out.
Yeah. You want to know what? So at Adepticon, I was playing teams, and we were playing silly like hypercryptic Necrons, and we had a Nightbringer get essentially 2-shot by Knights in like turn
Wow.
1, and then we went, oh, we lose the game, and that was our last round,
Wow.
which lost us placing. It was really, really sad.
Dang.
Sometimes you just don't roll 4s, bro. I don't know.
It's true. That's true. Sometimes you don't roll 4s. Sometimes you don't half damage either. No, you do have damage.
It's truly a skill issue,
Yeah, absolutely. Nightbringer is truly a skill issue. If your Nightbringer dies, that's your fault. It's on you.
Honestly, just roll more 4s. Lamau, I'll kick W.
So, first and foremost, is Canoptic still the best way to play Necrons in 10.5?
So I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think the answer is. Okay, sorry, this is a very nuanced answer. I think the answer is no, but then that's a kind of a longer answer because I think that wraiths specifically are not the way into the top of the meta. Because if we examine what the top of the meta looks like, I see, like personally, I see like Grey Knights, Nemesis, Dread Knight spam. I see Thousand Suns, classic, right? Usually 2 with maybe 1, right? Magnus and a bunch of goobers. We see Blood Angels, we see Space Wolves. We see a lot of armor skew and a lot of Space Marine bodies, and then beyond that, we see some tricksy stuff, right? We see
like
tricksy
sisters
mids.
and yeah.
Oh, don't even talk to me about sisters. I don't want to talk about it. So I got PTSD. I lost in the finals last week to sisters. Big sad.
Oh wow, rough.
It is what it is, though. So, and those things are difficult for wraiths to deal with because sisters, especially as well as Blood Angels and Grey Knights, do have the damage check to kill wraiths. And the tricks don't matter as much, if that makes sense. Like reactive moving behind a wall with 1.1 being enshrined in the rules now is useful. It's more useful than WTC, to fight through and just the wall. Because now you can actually like truly magic box places. But I think that I think is slightly, and I'm gonna say the word, it's very, very, very slightly suboptimal because you get more utility out of some of the other attachments. Like I've been testing Awakened a lot. I know a couple of my friends have been practicing Hypercrypt recently. Like I know that Silent King, Double Doomsday Arc, Trash, Scorpex, that's very good in both Phalanx, Hypercrypt. I don't run that in Awakened, but I think Awakened, you need to really utilize the shenanigans that you get from +1 to hit, and roll
absolutely
off of the strat. So I'm really liking like more Scorpex, more Immortals, things like that. But that's maybe a little bit more of a longer answer than you're looking for.
No, not at all. No.
I'm going to say no asterisk.
I think the playbook is now wide open, and it's some of the new units that are being injected in cover. Like there was always the perpetual downside of the Canoptic race that they just didn't kill a dang thing. Like I would just ram them with rhinos and all sorts of nonsense, and just make their life a little bit harder. But like there's been a couple of units that have come into the fore. Things like the Scorpec Destroyers with the Lord, definitely little packages of death that I've been really impressed by. But to your point, like I think the top of the meta has distanced themselves from Necrons, whereas Necrons have either stayed the same into them despite their nerfs also, or gotten worse. Is that pretty much what you're saying?
Yeah, I think in general, we've been gotten knocked down to, I would say, maybe top of B, give or take. And that's very matchup dependent. I think the thing that I've had struggled with recently when writing lists is being able to deal with, firstly, like T-Suns in general is just a problem. Then dealing with marine bodies and dealing with armor skew, and you kind of just can't fit all of it into one list. And you kind of just have to do the meta call of what you think you can deal with, and then play your way out of bad matchups.
My last couple of games against Necrons, these nerfs have changed the kind of stratification of the matchup for me. I've never felt like I was able to rush Necrons before. But now you can put a damage check on Necrons if people are playing Canoptic Court like 18 race, because they don't, once you can make them commit all the wraiths to the grind, they don't have the periphery units to continue scoring pressure. Is another thing as well. If you're committing to those 18 wraiths, the rest of your army is almost gone at that point. Like you got 2 DDAs, three units of Necron of wraiths with support characters, and then the logical stuff you have to take from there. Like your army's, it's just that's it. That's the whole thing. Like you take a Catan or two. You don't actually have anything else to continue playing the game.
Yeah, which okay, in a lot of ways is good. Like and I think a lot of people have said this in a lot of different podcasts in a lot of different ways. Like the bell curve of like distribution of like what a good faction is and what a bad faction is has very much so narrowed. Like you truly can like take some what would someone define as a B tier army and like just slap with it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I personally meta call that melee is the way. In a lot of different ways. I think that fast melee is reigns supreme on GW terrain, which I know that a lot of Europeans don't care about, but I don't care about what Europeans care about.
To your point, as I predominantly play on WTC terrain, and I believe that holds true, if not plus some, on WTC. I think, and I've said this on a couple podcasts now, we've got three main terrain formats now. We have LGT, or London Circuit Terrain, which is a little bit better for shooting. They got a little bit better firing lanes, but not crazy. Then we have GW, which is kind of in the middle, kind of neutral both ways. Then WTC, I think, is a little better for melee than for shooting or for either.
Yeah, those like long squares where they touch the edge of the terrain and you can stage behind, like maybe 12 inches away from the objective.
Yeah, super Ls, where you can almost put your whole army behind a single L, or hide multiple big knights that can now go through walls behind big L, stuff like that. Like you can get really juicy interactions on WTC. So if Canoptic Court isn't the go, in your professional opinion, what would be? Yeah, this is just off the cuff, brother. There's literally no pressure to be perfect on this. What do you think the best attachment is if it's not Canoptic?
I've been playing a lot with Awakened. I brought them to a Teams event in prep for ATC recently, and on my side of the team I went 5-0,
nice.
Which was pretty useful. So it performed well. And then if you just saw this might date the podcast a little bit, but ATC just happened today, and they just finished. And the final game on stream was Mike Taylor with Team Battle Brothers, and me and him strategized his list. I am not a fan of the wraiths that he had in the list, but most of the rest of it is very close to the build that I was running, and I think that's very close to optimal. Obviously, with teams, you can skew a little bit into saying, "Hey, don't give me this matchup." But even in those matchups, you can usually score pretty good. Like going into that Space Wolves game, I personally would give him like a 6-14 or so, just because of how he has his list built and how Thunderwolves go. But they won, so take it.
Yeah,
not to spoil anything, but.
Well, yeah, this will be coming out in about 24 to 30 hours from now, so people got plenty of time to catch up if they.
Yeah. People read Meta Mondays, right? Yeah,
exactly right. So I agree. I think Awakened Dynasty would be my pick at the moment. It's the most well-rounded after Canoptic Court. It does the most for the most units, and opens up so many other fringe units to being takeable. Where do you think Hypercrypt's at? Because I see Hypercrypt as being the one where you do come into skill issues. Every turn there is a plethora of different lines of play that you can make, and it seems to me that I've played against me. I haven't lost to Hypercrypt yet. I've lost to Canoptic more times than I can count, but I've actually not lost to Hypercrypt because it is just so freaking hard to play perfectly all the time. How do you feel Hypercrypt goes in 10.5?
Okay, so I think it's good, and I'm gonna go and break down as to like why I think Awaken's a little better than Canoptic, and why I personally don't rate Hypercrypt at this point. I think it's good, but Necrons in general have a damage problem that a lot of top armies are able to play very passive with small screening units, and then can truly stat check you into oblivion, and Hypercrypt allows for 3 essential core tenets to do in addition to the rest of your army. Is you can alpha strike with shooting, right? With 3-inch deep strike with shooting does end like Eldar and Drakari's like brains. They just disappear.
It's over. Yeah.
Sisters to a lesser extent because they have a lot of flamers flying around right now, but them as well, and transports. It allows you to do asymmetric damage. So the Matt Laura build allows for a lot of asymmetric damage where you put Immortals in a place where they can't get one tapped, and then you phase them back to your Monolith, and then use Chronomancers to do attritional damage before you end up sending turn 3 or 4. But meanwhile, maintaining your scoring like machine that is 3-inch deep strike and pick up Lamau. And then Awakened and those are the things those 2 things. And the third thing in Hypercrypt is mobility, right? And weird mobility is useful, but I think you can get it in other ways in the other detachments. What Awakened and Canoptic do is they amp your damage, and they give weird tricks, right? Because like the identity of Necrons in my head is weird tricks and being annoyingly statty, right? Being like, oh, well, I think I can kill that, like probably like 60%.
Yeah.
If they ever fail, you go, lol, okay, anyway, you're
Undone.
dead.
Yeah, your damage is undone, and I move forward with my game plan, and double down effect,
right?
snowballing.
And then the reason that Awaken edges it out, in my opinion, is that like being so a fun thought like bubble is that Canoptic Court, you get to 1 CP reactive move behind a wall, which essentially retains your assets, right? It keeps you know a wraith unit alive or saves 3 to 4 wraiths. However, if you put a character on an objective and they shoot it to death and he gets back up and you score the points anyway,
correct.
Well, really, it's 1 CP save an asset, isn't it? Isn't that the same thing?
Well, plus points.
Points
plus like 5. Plus like 5 primary in addition, and your only expenditure was 1 command point, which is a refilling.
It's the same thing as reactive move with wraiths, which is very very interesting. And you don't have like there's nuanced play in each one. Doing a reactive move mortals is fun sometimes. Getting up like Illuminor Xeris is absolutely hilarious. The mini Catan getting up is so you say he has a 2-up, 4-up, 4-up, and he gets back up at half wounds at the end of the phase. You say,
it's disgusting. Yeah. I've seen that. That was in Index days. I had him actually just like pull a rampage through my backfield. Like he's supposed to be like a spindly little, cryptech. Why is he an unkillable death machine?
No, 100%. Like, and that's why, like, for what it's worth, I'm bracketing these two things apart because those detachments allow you to do tricks and they allow you to amp your damage significantly. In both of them, you allow it, both with rerolls to hit your chapter master rerolls, as well as +1 strength, +1 AP, +1 to hit, things like that. They amp your damage, which lets you play the games into the statty armies, whereas Hyperphase doesn't let you do that. And I don't think that the damage that you do that's asymmetrical is enough, or the attritional damage that you do is enough to matter. I think in a lot of cases right now, I think it's good. I think that it very much so is good. And like the ability to Alpha Strike is very, very strong. Picking up 2 Doomsday Arcs and Silent King and then repositioning them to blow up a line. And then if they don't get tagged, you just get to Omega wall your whole army and then you lose. But I don't think that. I think that a lot of top armies have the screens to stop the full Alpha Strike, and then they have the damage to like just go, okay, I'm gonna kill the Silent King now. Which is why I personally don't rate it. Even though I know a lot of players are doing really good with it right now.
Yeah, I don't love a lot of the monolith builds anymore. Of course, I want to see Hypercrypts go more MSU. I want to see more Death Marks. I want to see more, Tomb Blades and 5-mans around those, 2 or 3 good shooting assets that you can essentially use like Dread Knights, picking them up, putting them down in a firing lane, picking them up, putting them down in a firing lane. And then I just want to see nonsense. I want to see, the rest of the list, I want to just be scoring nonsense, playing like Eldar, where you just like, there is no card you cannot pull, and you're just going to put a score on your opponent. You're just going to like, man, there is nothing you can stop me from getting to like 75. You can't, at minimum, you can't stop me getting 75. And I believe that's a very powerful thing and a very unique thing in Pariah Nexus, because not many people can like walk up to a table and freaking guarantee they're going to put 75 on somebody. So I want to see that list, like flayed ones and just five nonsense models. And every time someone undercommits to one and leaves one left, you're like, lol, back in reserve, regen, off we go.
I hear what you're saying, and this is something that I for what's worth, Hyperphase was the first, I think, detachment revealed, and it was the one that I was most excited about. And then I played a very, very non-zero amount of games with them. And I the thing that you don't realize until you play the army is that there's like 3 things that I think you don't realize. First one is you still have to stand on objectives. Going up is cute until you have to. Then you realize you go, oh wait, if I pick up, I don't get primary, right? And then you go, oh well. The second thing is once you get to top tables, your people just can screen 3-inch deep strikes. They just measure the size of your base and they screen it.
Yeah, from like 1 or 2 really important places on the table, 100% they can lock them down.
Yeah, and like I've had like a Drakari player systematically screen his entire DZ because I tried to go fixed. And then I went, oh, I actually can't score fixed anymore. That's crazy. I guess I send at you. I have no choice. I guess I try and shoot you and do attritional damage, but then I'm just losing secondaries, which is really hard because they have a billion assets.
I should explain myself. The reason I thought that could be a thing they could do now is because the lack of screening armies. There's no more unending swarms. There's way less orc hordes. There's just way less people that have the ability or the willingness to do those things. But you are right. There's things still like Drukhari out there who can just do it like incrementally without an issue. And more than that, they're going to be doing it with transports with 5 guys in it who you don't really deal with very well.
Hitting Kalodner with immolators with 5 battle sisters in them is going to make me unhappy.
Yeah, that's totally fair. All right, we got to move on. I think we've already talked about a bunch of units to watch. We've already talked about detachments to watch and things on the fringe. Where would you say, in your opinion, in 10.5, the skill floor and the skill ceiling of Necrons is at? Are they an easy to play, hard to master? Are they easy to master? Where are they at?
So I think that, and every faction specialist kind of has their own, like, actually, the skilling in my army is in fact very high.
Yeah, of course.
Every faction specialist believes that, like, intrinsically, because they want to believe they're good. But I think that the floor has. Okay, so I'll say this: if you bring 12 Wraiths, 2 Catan, 2 Doomstalker, and Trash to a GT, you're gonna go 3-2. Like, you're gonna YOLO some people off the board. Okay.
Yeah, but even if you've barely played with the army before, you'll do very well. That floor is one of the highest floors in the game.
You go, okay. So anyway. Can you kill this? No? Okay, my reanimator heals, I react to move away, and you lose. And then you'll hit some people who are better, and you'll start to realize some of the weaknesses of the army. So the floor, I think, for that specific list is low. For some of the other builds, I think it's much higher. Like, I still fundamentally don't know if I understand how to play hypercrypts. I am no guru. I'm no Matt Laura, right? I'm just a man a casual 18 Wraith enjoyer. The ceiling though is pretty. I think it's middling. I think there's a lot of skill expression that you can do with weird stuff. Like, I've been experimenting with Night Sides and Lichguard recently, and they're very, very spicy. They, I think, open up an entire like dimension of play in Awakened and in Phalanx. But it's, once again, the identity in my head of Necrons is like tricksy, right? Tricksy stuff. And that allows for a decent amount of skill expression while maintaining that you don't get your opponents. You have to be very careful to verbalize everything that you can do and go, by the way, if you go here, by the way, don't forget, you're lining up your shots right now. I can do this. Because even though sometimes people will like go, oh, well, I can deal with this, they can't. There's no actual counterplay. They may think that they can play around the little trick, and they can't, because you just position in such a way where you can always heroic. Like, I'll give one piece of cute little tech piece. I really love creating a spiral flower of Lichguard around a Catan, such that specifically the Nightbringer, such that he can heroic to any point where they are charged, while leaving a 40 millimeter size based hole for him. That way, the unit crashes into the Lichguard, and you get the swing with Nightbringer. And you sit that behind a wall, and you go, anyway, so are you going to shoot me? No, I'm behind a wall. Oh, are you going to charge me? Okay, Nightbringer. And that's a very cute piece.
Can we all agree that the only FAQ the game needs right now is that the Nightbringer goes on a 200 mil base?
Impossible.
Just to pay for his sins. Just to pay for the absolute sins. Mil? Yeah, stuff it. No, stuff it. I'm being facetious, obviously.
Really quick little piece of like lore. So I bought a Nagash before I think 9th edition came out, because I was really, for Apocalypse, I wanted to have a Super Catan, and I was gonna have him be my Super Catan. Yeah. And then I think Void Dragon got released just after that, because I was really excited for him to be Void Dragon. And Nagash's base, let me tell you what, his base is a lot bigger than Void Dragon's base, and the Void Dragon's base is a lot bigger than Deceiver and Nightbringer. So I love my little 40 mil, 300 points of much better than they should be.
Yeah, that's totally fair. If you got it, why wouldn't you? All right, last question. I think you've already answered this, but you think Necrons are about a B tier army at the moment?
I would say top of B-ish. I think that we struggle into S tier armies, which makes us B tier.
Well, I do think that the fact that Canoptic Court has been such exactly the same playbook for what feels like all of 10th edition. Well, it hasn't been that, but they're one of the first codexes. Sorry?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, that's correct, but it's also made them a stable target. It's also made them a very stable target. Everyone knows how to play into them. That's what you said. The issue is once you get to top tables, there's people there who've literally played against Canoptic Court 100 times. They know everything you're going to do, they know everything you can do, they know all your weapon profiles, they know where all the lines of play are. And that's where the issues, I think, are. So that's where I think you're absolutely correct, mate. It's better to go and do some fresh new things. And no offense, I know tons of Canoptic Court players who were bored out of their freaking brains, just ready for something else to do with this faction that they love. So I do agree. I think right now, top of B, anywhere between top of B, middle of A, depending on how proficient you are with said faction and kind of what terrain you're on. I think they do love WTC a bit more and GW a bit more than they like LGT and some of the other formats. FLG, for example. All right, mate. On that note, we're going to check out of this part 1, go over and record part 2, where we're going to be talking about matchups. And you've already identified 4 or 5 we're going to unpack and talk about 3 of their best. 3 of their best, 3 of their worst, everything in the middle. Come and join us over there. Josh, anyone you want to shout out or anything you'd like to plug before we check out?
I wanna firstly shout out the Terran Battle Friends, TBF, we the boys. Everyone on the team is awesome. I've been practicing with they don't matter, but they like having their names shouted out. Adam, Pat, Steven, all y'all are real ones, and
love it.
I hope to lord this over you that I was on the podcast and you weren't. Nerds.
You got it, mate. Anyway, happy to live and you know, yeah. I feel good about this. Memes shall be made. Spears shall be shouted. A red day. Anyway, we'll see you over the next one. We should have Ben Jurek joining us with the Orks segment up next. Sit tight. If it's not Ben, it's going to be Kyle Grundy with Tau. Thank you again very much, Josh. We'll see you in part 2.
It's time to down your unders.
And we're back for our 3rd segment on this episode 204. I am with one of the... I want to say he's one of the heartthrobs for the Greenskins, because he is a perennial Ork lover and enjoyer, but not always an Ork player. Mr. Ben Jurek, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, sir. That is a very nice intro of me. I like that. That makes me feel good, even though it talks about me not playing Orks, but it's honest.
Yeah. I try. I couldn't not be honest. So, but you played a ridiculous amount of them. Post Codex pre 10.5, as we're calling it collectively as a community. And we're here to talk about that. We're going to unpack that with Ben as our Ork expert. Talk about where they're at right now in 10.5, what they have going for them, their archetypes and stuff like that. Yada yada yada. But Ben, hot takes on where Orks are at, because they're getting a little bit of lamentation.
Yeah, I think they got knocked back down to where they were before their codex. And my best description for them at that time was they're the world's okayest army.
Yeah, it's like they got a codex and then they deleted every reason to play most of the stuff in that codex. I still so a lot of people are still very much on Dread Mob stands, and I bless their cotton socks. I love each and every one of them, but that is a list that just does not function on 3/4 of tables that you're going to play on. Against a competent opponent. And I freaking want it to be good, but suffice to say, I do think Mega Knobs got dealt with, their Feel No Pain got dealt with fairly. The points were probably a little bit overtuned. The green tie changes were, I believe, unnecessary, especially seeing as the mission structure was about to heavily disincentivize Horde armies.
Yeah, the resilience of that army, though, that it's still playable when it suffered a quintuple nerf. I've never seen an army in 40k remain playable and remain takeable, even at the highest level, after a quintuple nerf. So that that says something.
Yunari.
Okay. Maybe. Well, I mean, quintuple nerf at once.
Yeah, they got nerfed for 2 years and we're still a top faction.
Yeah, I'm saying you can nail with 5 nerfs in one update.
Yeah, that's correct. That is correct, and still be relevant. Because that is the state of it, right? So Orks had issues in their index with the fact that they were a relatively face-up faction. They were an MSU presser faction, which just usually functioned off, the Warhorde with just a massive amount of transports, with usually knobs, beast snaggers, stuff like that being the core of the army. That changed in modality into the Codex, where Bully Boys was ridiculous, Green Tide was extremely good, it was the best Horde army in the game, and then there was a bunch of awesome fun builds with the Beast Hogs and the Dread Mob, etc. And now it feels like the Index detachment's best again. What do you make of that, mate?
I think I still think there's definitely a lot of play in Warhorde. I think it's probably the simplest equation. I think it's you're gonna have your bell curve of like just do more damage. They are the detachment that does the most damage.
It's your invasion fleet and Gladius. Like it's just kind of the this is just fine default.
Yeah, it does the most damage. You bring Gaz in it. Gaz combos with others, his crit 5s on top of their sustained, just combos everywhere. I think a commonality you're going to see among literally almost every faction, every detachment, with the exception of Big Gut, so Listen Crews, Green Tide, Warhorde, and Dreadmob, is you're going to see 20 plus flash kits. Like that's become the pivot.
Ooh.
Is just lots and lots of flash kits, because at 80 points for 5, the melee output, the shooting output, what they provide to the game is really important. So now it's just like, what flash kit army are you running? It's no longer what orc army you're running. It's what flash kit army are you running?
Oh, wow. And a lot of people were talking about flash kits being a necessary pick for a time because there was no other good screen clear unit in the book. And this is sans, pour one out again for Badrock. This is post Badrock, there still was no other good screen clear unit. And so now to see them say that you're saying that they're just good enough to take as a freaking unit, not just as a screen clear.
Yeah, that's. I think you'll see a lot of winning lists from here on out. Specifically, you start looking at WTC lists are coming out, stuff like that. They're going to have a crap ton of flash kits in them. I won't leave home without 20 in some form of package, like 10-5-5, 10-10, and you're going to see some people bring in 30. There's odd old attachments. They're all bringing them. Like they're all bringing a bunch of flash kits of some sort.
Are flash kits knobs? Do they have the knob keyword?
They are not knob keyword though. They act like a knob in every other single way.
Yeah, that's a bit frustrating. Because that could have been the new Bully Boys. 30 regular knobs, 30 flash kits.
Oh god, if they had keyword knob, if they literally made that change overnight, Bully Boys becomes playable. More way better than it is. Because they actually turn on the keyword, the stratagems.
Yeah, tell us about the state of Bully Boys. Is it just a dead faction without Mega Knobs? Because Mega Knobs, of course, they're overcosted right now, and they don't have the durability of other units of their cost. Well, they don't have an invuln straight up, so they're just so susceptible to multi-melters and things like that. But where do you see Bully Boys right now? And then where do you see Green Tide?
Well, Bully Boys is not dead. I can assure this with some workshopping and some playing I've done that it's not completely dead. It's just a version of that and love is dead. If you bring a war boss centric bunch of MSU, or even like a 20 boy unit with war bosses attached, or even single war bosses, because like a beast boss on foot by himself, or even war bosses that are riding squigs, like they all still benefit from double WA. They just don't benefit from stratagems. So while your stratagem suite is mostly like swept under the rug, you can still bring just a bunch of dudes that get to advanced charge, +1 attack, +1 strength the entire time. That's a really good army roll when you get it twice.
I do love switching to boys. In fact, I remember. I can't remember if it was you. Did I have you on for the Orc review? I did.
Yeah, at least one of them.
Yeah. And we were talking about, there was a joke at the time that Bully Boys made a better Green Tide than Green Tide.
Yeah, if you're trying to play the aggressive version, I didn't realize how oppressive Green Tide was till I actually put it on the table.
Correct. Yeah.
But I was one of the people that proponed that they might actually be that way. I think like 120 man unit in a Bully Boy list is certainly playable. I certainly ran it for a little bit myself there at a couple of big events, and it's still certainly pretty gosh dang good. But I think Bully Boys is it's relatively mid just because you lose the majority of your stratagems, and the only thing your stratagem is triggering off of is like the 3 knob units you're bringing, because you're not bringing 3 knob units.
You're bringing 30 knobs, pretty much.
Yeah. You can bring 15. You can bring them in 5s, because like the 10 mans are kind of overkillish, and you spend too many points on a unit that's just going to die to a sneeze. So, but you're bringing 3 units of knobs, whether it's 10-5-5, 10-10, like doesn't matter. But they're the only thing that triggers your stratagem, and that's what makes the army weak, which is why we, if we go back to look at the flash kit, if they add a knob keyword to that data sheet, suddenly that army becomes really freaking good.
Yeah. Oh, they give us knobs on bikes again. Let's do that. How about that, hey? Unlegended Doom.
Give it back, or Warboss on bike would be amazing right now.
Yeah, dude. I know you got Warboss on trike. It says they're there, pat on the shoulder. It does. It's one of those awkward. So awkward. Um,
On the
fringe archetypes. So let's talk about some of the other builds. I mean, the hogs are still a thing. You know, hog jail could be a thing if the points were a little bit juicier. And that was one that when we did the review, I was like, all these rules are good. All these rules are fantastic. Just the units are awkward. Like the logistics of the hog units and beast snaggers, all that stuff. So you go.
As far as fringe units go, I actually have a love for Dread Mob. And and as I predicted, it was definitely a list that you wouldn't expect to take it to be the list that's going to do relatively well. And that list starts with, you named it, Flash Kits. But the there's going to the core of the current Dread Mob stuff that's going to do well. And I know at ATC this weekend, it showed some relatively good performances because in a teams format you can kind of get into what you want to get into. Is Ludas and Segs teamed up together can be a very deadly unit. We know when they have reroll hits sustained, they're shooting just as good in Overwatch as anywhere else, and they put in a heck of a lot of work, and so do the Met guns. I have killed entire Space Marine units in Overwatch with some Smash It guns in Overwatch. So it's a relatively kooky army. It can be unreliable at times with the swings, but I think that army is on the rise as soon as those lists become a bit more public as far as what people are seeing, what they can actually do and can actually build.
Because that's a Dread Mob list that is like 20 to 30 Flash Kits, 20 to 30 looters, right? And then maybe like a unit of cans and then mech guns. Yeah.
Like 100 Gretchen Zodgrod, because Zodgrod reactive moving 12 is hilarious.
Busted.
There's a lot of play with it. I don't think a lot of people know that's a thing yet. And as that hits the public taste, or people also had the palate to pick it up, because I for one, I'm going to Tacoma this upcoming weekend. I just don't have the heart to do it. I'm not. I know. I want to win a super major, not be the best orc at a super major. My goal.
Fair.
So.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen, Ben. What happened?
I started winning big tournaments, and
you can't go back now. Yeah.
Yep.
That's my problem. I never won a big tournament, so I can stay a snowflake. That's where you went wrong. You got a taste for the finer things. But anyway, moving on again. What is the skill floor and skill ceiling of orcs in your mind at the moment? Like, how easy are they to pick up? How much expertise do you need to have to get mastery of the faction? And when you do, what are your results like?
The majority of the builds are pretty one-dimensional. Like the army, it does one thing. The exception like Dread Mob, it does one thing. It's going to move forward and stage in some way, shape, fashion, or form, and then it's going to charge you in a bunch of places. How it does it, how much damage it does when it gets there, how often it can do it are the things that change. It's a pretty one-dimensional army. If you can play one detachment, you can play the majority of them, with Dread Mob being the asterisk, because that army is definitely very weird. But it as far as floor, I would give it, if I was going to an S tier rating, I would give it a for easy. You could pick this up. If you know how to play an assault army, you can pick it up, play it. There's not a whole bunch of other things to learn. You don't need them to be well, what are my reserves here? Or what does this look like? Or you're not thinking about that too hard. It's okay, I'm going to reserve the Stormboy units and maybe a Gretchen unit. I'm going to have these things set up. I need to be aware of cool things like free heroic interventions on some missions, and free and and stuff like that.
I was going to ask you about heroic intervention. Has that been something that's hurt or buffed orcs? The fact that heroic intervention is now a thing people do.
Well, orcs can do it just as much as anybody else. It's just not often that orcs are getting countercharged that often. I think Warhorde having fight on death is probably guaranteed fight on death is probably the reason to take the army at this point. For all the other assault armies, that ability to trade up or 2-for-1 is really important. And it doesn't stop heroic intervention per se, but there is just a lot more play when you're able to always have that in the tank, in case someone tags you. It makes it so only 3 units of your guys can fight there and 7 fight over there, type of deal.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, totally accurate. And the fact that you can set that up as a threat, but in your pocket, you're actually just going to fight on death. I think is really cute. It's just very, very, very cute. All right, so we're talking about the diversity of lists right now for Orks. Is it pretty it seems like a faction that is very not solved as far as what is the best in the new Prior Nexus mission packs and the new 10.5 changes. Is that safe to say? And if you were to say to the the budding war boss out there, or the confused war boss out there who's like trying to figure out what to play, what would you say to take?
I think the go-to lists are not solved, and I think part of that is that there's no clear winner. Like, do you play Green Tide? Well, Green Tide's still pretty good. It didn't get too bad. It's just not oppressive. It's not doing silly 12-inch charges on turn 5. It's not,
On turn 5, yeah.
It's not it's not auto blood surging everywhere it wants to. Like, there's a little bit less consistency there, but like a good pilot can still bring out a lot in Green Tide. Like, I think the skill ceiling in Green Tide went up quite a bit, and if you were a good Green Tide player before, you can keep playing Green Tide. You're not, your army is worse. But it's still going to play the way you expect it to. As far as like budding Orc players out there, I think like just stick to the index. If you have that army ready to go, or if you're already playing Green Tide, just keep playing Green Tide. Now, if you want to try something different, you have the models laying around. Go ahead, try out the Dread Mob. See if that's for you. That army is goofy, does a lot of damage. In the Big Hunt, a lot of people randomly have that army because like it was Squig Hogs you got from that starter box and whatnot. So some people just have a bunch of Squig Hogs from a time ago, and that army was also a thing not too long ago. So you can just pick that up army and go. That army is probably the easiest to counter, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But like you also have the like. Just pray to the pairings gods, get 5 good pairings, win a GT.
That's true. Go first. Yeah. 5 games. You lull, put them in jail, beat them on up. But the issue is there, of course, the logistics. It's the same issues that the Space Wolves have, and but they're less resilient, than Space Wolves. Space Wolves have AOC and a bunch of other different things they can do, involves, etc. Whereas
better wah.
Yeah, they do. No, they do. They actually do.
Lament.
Yeah, it's terrible. All right, so let us jump over to the enjoyment that you get from playing. Like, how joyous is it to play said faction right now?
So if you ever watch me play Eldar, I look dead in my face. I have a dead eye, deadpan, like, okay, I do this, I do that. If you ever got to see me do that during my Eldar phase, Orcs is the exact opposite. I get a big shine in my eye. I'm smiling. It's great. It's good fun. We're crumping bits. Dudes are dying. My dudes are dying. Their dudes are dying. It's an active board state, and it's just an enjoyable army to play.
Well, I'm just really happy to hear that, because my biggest fear was that these changes had made it not so fun for the Orc player. Like, the Orc player was actually struggling.
I think for opponents, it's much better, because being a bully boy opponent, even in the mirror, it
was trash.
Garbage.
Yeah, it was trash. I did so much work at a couple of different tournaments to dodge very good players who were very close to winning said tournament because they were playing bully boys, or in Orc mirror matches. I'm like, never say there. Am I going to stream that when I don't have to? Oh, look, the Mega Knobs moved forward. That's nice. Did he call the Wa? Oh,
yep.
He did call the Wa on the logical turn. He was always going to call the Wa. Nothing happened.
Oh, look, none of his things died. Ta-da!
None of his stuff died. Yay. Wow. It was just so dry. I mean, do you think the nerfs to bully boys were justified? And if you could go and change anything about them, what would you do?
If the stratagems weren't as restrictive as they are right now, where they literally touch 2 data sheets.
Correct.
And one of them just got sent to the moon.
Yeah.
I think the army's fine. I don't. How many points? Like, there are other data sheets in Orcs that are perfectly fine. Yeah. If you had Warboss led units could activate those stratagems, it'd probably be fine. If you gave flash kits the knob keyword, it'd probably be fine. You don't actually need to go back and unnerf Mega Knobs. You can just like make the detachment not as exclusive.
Broader. Yeah, make it broader.
Yeah.
How many points did Mega Knobs go up per model?
10.
Yeah, you could cut.
Increase.
Yeah, you could. I don't want to say. I wish GW could do more incremental increases rather than only doing 5 or 10 point increases. Because for some reason I want them to go down by about 3 or 4 points a model. Because I don't know, for some reason I think 5's too many to get them to go down again. but
Yeah.
they probably go down 5 because they're not takeable. They're like literally like.
Honestly, at 5 up, feel no pain. You can just leave them where they were. Like they'd be good. It wouldn't be insane.
That's correct. Like
At 5 up, feel no pain. They're definitely dying to a lot more stuff they weren't dying to before.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, were the Green Tide nerfs justified? By the way.
No.
No,
well,
they weren't,
yes
right?
and no. It's some of the nerfs are like quintuple. Like really, you didn't need to go that hard. You can just like hit them a couple times. Like I think pulling too many levers at the same time is always a mistake.
Yeah.
I think it's lucky that Green Tide's playable.
Well, there were so many jokes when it came out that were like, "Wow, Green Tide got nerfed more than all of Necrons. It got nerfed worse than all of Necrons." Okay.
Like who at GW got hurt? Who hurt them with Green Tide?
A lot of people, apparently.
Like,
jeez, for this reaction.
And like it was like a little lever here. Like we're gonna do a 10-point nerf here. We're gonna hit this strategy. We're gonna hit this strategy. We're gonna create this secondary. It's like, what? Oh, why was it justified? You could have literally just like you can either like make this strategy cost 2 CP, or you could do a small point buff to this thing, but like just like they took away everything they hated. They did a full wipe of it. Like they thought Green Tide was going to take over the Earth when it won at the time with like the nerfs came. Like it won like what 2 events where Bully Boys won like literally 8 times more.
Well, and the thing is like. Endless Swarm was killed by just the mission changes and the lack of re-racking, of perpetual re-racking units. I think the mission changes were going to be enough to really harm that army because the standard Green Tide Order gives up Cull and would have been susceptible to Assassinate as well. Because there's just no way you can't use those 20 mans without attached characters, if not 2 attached characters. So every 20 man's just a huge payout in points. I'm of the opinion it could almost get all the nerfs could almost be undone, and we could just see if it's busted because you can just blow it up and score 1 million points.
I think if you unnerfed it today, it would have a moderately above average win rate.
I think it would be a strong list. It would not be busted. I don't think
it would. I don't think we're looking at 60, 65, or even 55. I mean, like a 54% win rate is where I would put that army. Like.
Because I'm of the opinion that like unnerfed Green Tide right now wouldn't beat Blood Angels or Sisters. In this mission pack, that's what I'm saying. In this mission pack right now, I do not believe it would contend with the 2 best armies in the game. Especially not Sisters. Sisters was just like 10 Seraphim come down, 20 dead boys, 20 boys are dead. Did you try and move another 20 dead boys? Overwatch, they're dead too.
I think with the flash kits changes, I think that's actually quite a bit. I think your traditional list. I think the list people were taking were before. If you brought the pre, but like with that pivot into the 20+ flash kits, that significantly changes those matchups.
That's fair. Yeah, that is fair because then you threaten the power armor from range.
And I've done quite a bit of a behind the iron curtain practice, and they're pretty good.
So for this show, I was trying to find people who were going to WC or not playing, or just not going to WTC because I don't want to press mostly my mates
too many questions,
for stuff that they don't want to tell me and just end up with a really awkward episode. So
the lists are out. You can see their flash kits, a bunch of them. Voila. We know what they do. Like
literally, the rest of my day is going to be trolling lists between the little bits of work I need to do. But my dude, so that's done for part 1. We're going to go and call part 2. We're going to talk about matchups and talk about what they can do, what they can't do, pros and cons, and where they lie in the meta. But if you were to put Orks into our tier list, our conventional, S to D tier list, where would you put it?
I'm giving them the average grade of B.
Yeah, I put them as B. I think the optics and the feel bads around them are worse than they actually are, but still, I think they're not in a fantastic place. Yeah.
I was hopeful. I was optimistic. I was definitely on the they're not as bad as you think train, and then I got ragdolled for an entire weekend by some of the best players in the world, and I walked away playing Blood Angels.
That'll do it. Not the place to check your theory, by the way. Yeah. I do that all the time. I'm like, I go and play like snowflake fun stuff that I've got like a 10% of me thinks that actually could be secretly really freaking good, and then I go play Matt Morrisoli and Jeremy Martin, and I'm like, not good.
Yep.
Fair enough.
They'll do that to you.
Yeah, they will. Anyway, mate, we're going to check you out. Go over and court on part 2. Hopefully, you guys will join us there for some more Ben Jurek action. And you've already heard from our wonderful Junior on the Votann and then Josh now for the Necrons. We're going to have one more after this with Kyle Grundy, if I can lock down the Mad Lad for the Tau portion. And yeah, that'll be us all done. A whole, probably close to 3 hours of content. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed it. And thank you very much, Ben, for coming on. I look forward to seeing you in 3 and a bit weeks at WTC?
Just 3 weeks, baby. It'll be so much
It's
fun.
crazy. It is crazy. All right, see you there, brother. Thank you very much.
It's time to down your unders.
And we are back with our final segment for this part 1, that being Tau. By now, you have heard from experts for Votann with Junior, Josh with Necrons, and Ben with Orks. And we are joined by the number 1 ranked Tau player in the world. He's essentially a professional Tau player now, running his own businesses. He's coaching for Team England at the WTC, and he's one of the maddest lads you will ever meet. His name is Kyle Grundy, mate. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for that marvellous introduction, and I'm glad to be here.
You just cracked the top 10 at the Sheffield Major, hey? Only, brushing dust off your shoulder, 210-odd player event. Not too bad.
Yeah, man, I've been absolutely ruining it in the scene recently. Last couple of Super Majors, been smashing it with my Tau, really enjoying it. And hats off to Ben Jones, who beat me in the last game of Sheffield. He's ended my, 4 Super Major undefeated streak. So hats off to him. But yeah, I've been absolutely killing it. I love it at the moment.
Yeah, well, you've been smashing it for the last 3 years on the old fish cows.
Yeah.
But we are here to talk how they are doing now, how they're doing in 10.5, brother. How have they taken the changes? How have they adapted? And how are you feeling about them at the moment?
I think the first caveat is that Tau have always been quite a high skill cap army because you need a very particular type of player. Ones that focus on all the minutiae detail, the movement, positioning, and if you can crack that, you're gonna crack the codex. You're gonna be able to use Tau properly. I think they've been really good overall with the changes. We've had some good changes in terms of points, the rules themselves. I think Tau are very fast and you can do mission play very well. So I think we've got everything lined up to be a very good faction in this meta. I just think the only thing that holds Tau players back currently is just that kind of practicing some of the fundamentals like movement, positioning, when you trade. But I think overall, if you look at we're still sitting around that mid percentage, like 48 to 53% win rate. So I think if all the Tau players focused on the fundamentals, then we would probably be much higher. But I really think we've got, with the codex as well, a huge flexibility in terms of detachments, helps towards different play styles. Like if you're an aggressive player, we've got Montcar. If you still like the trading game and the patient hunter, you got Kion. Kroot was fun while it lasted, rest in peace. And hey, who wants to get into Tau? For what reason? Oh, battle suits. Cool. Well, we've got retaliation card. So, honestly, it's a very deep, balanced codex. I would argue to say it's one of the most balanced codexes out there. And I think if you're either new or you're a veteran, we're in a good spot, mate.
Well, I 100% agree with that. I love what you said about the movement phase as well, because I mean, you and I have done quite a few episodes on Tau now, and I played Tau to a WTC in 2019, and I realized playing Tau isn't about optimizing the shooting phase. It's more about optimizing the movement and the deployment phase than anything else. And if you do those, the shooting phase will just do what it does if you've taken the right units. And it doesn't matter from there. But yeah, beautifully said. And I freaking 100% agree, dude. I think Tau, the distance between the Tau detachments is not very large. But the power difference between, unlike Necrons, where for the longest time there was no reason to take anything that wasn't Canoptic Court, and then Bully Boys for Orks. The Tau book came out, and a lot of people were like, "Oh no, we only have 4 detachments. This is a BS." Blah 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 blah. I'm like, well, if 3 of them are really playable and really well balanced against each other, you're so much better than everybody else. I mean, how many detachments has CSM got? I know of. I have played against 2 of them.
Yeah.
I've played 20 games at the CSM now, and I played against 2 detachments. And I love that I've played against all 3 Tau detachments in the last month, which I think is superb. I played against Montcar and Red Cadre at the teams event I went to on the weekend. So yeah, superb to hear, dude.
What I think is really interesting about it as well, and obviously I'm a massive Tau nerd.
Really?
Wait, really shock horror.
Shocked. Whoa, I'm
What
aghast.
I really like with the detachments is that there, with the index, there was one obviously thing to do, which was wait and then blast everything from their family tree to the entire planet from turn 3 onwards, right?
Yeah.
But the patient hunter, the Khan side, and the Montcar, the way of the shortened blade, and what it basically does for me is that from a lore to an actual in-game transition, Kion, we got sick and tired of being put in our DZ and hemmed in and rushed.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're trading, and then you go berserk. The Montcar now allows you to actually go, I'm going to put you in your DZ because I've got the threat range and the movement and the scout moves and the advancing just to come at you. So it allows you to properly fulfill that. I just want to go. I want an aggressive player. I don't want to be waiting around. I want to get it done, dusted. Thank you very much. And then the retaliation for me is a combination of you have to be a master of the Kion and the Montcar to know when to be defensive and when to be aggressive. So from the 3 archetypes there of, are you a tactical defensive player? Then Kion's great. Are you an aggressive player? Then perfect. Go full send with Montcar and get it done. And then retaliation, if you want to have a level of kind of trying both, but having an army-wide rule for the whole game, then it allows you to do that. And that in alone, just from 3 detachments, fits perfectly with the lore of how you want to play Tau and how you should be playing Tau, but it pleases all types of generals. And I love that. And the Kroot one, my God, the models are great, and I absolutely love going unga bunga with rampages and Kroot stuff. And I still think there's something there, but I'd probably need to really, really go back to the drawing board with it.
Well, my issue is the Kroot list that I've seen people write, and the ones I've actually played against when the Codex first came out, didn't have as much Kroot in it as I wanted, and the Tau player wanted as well, because it was Kroot plus, it was 2 or 3 units of Kroot, regular Kroot, really good Kroot, a couple units of the Fast Stalkers, whatever they are, and then it was triple Riptide, triple Skyray, Hammerhead, and you're like, this is just Kauyon, but Kroot set of breaches. Fair enough. It's still cool. It's still really cool, and I'm happy Tau players have it, but it's a noticeable step down in power.
Well, the Kroot detachment for me, and I decided to flex with it when the Codex came out, so I stayed away from Kion and Montcar and stuff and went with the Kroot detachment because I'm always used to kind of experiencing reactive moves and all those jank and the positioning and the blocking and stuff from another player. But with the Kroot detachment, you were able to really capitalize on bringing back units, doing the move blocking, just basically using it as chess pieces with no damage and just going, okay, cool. Well, I've got all the tricks that I need. I can play the mission perfectly, and I just can bring dudes back. And it really taught me a lot more about the charging phase, how to do proper pylons, consolidates, even heroic intervention. And then the rampages were just disgusting, and going in and one-shotting Magnus with angry gorillas was just hilarious. And I took it to the teams tournament, and I went undefeated with it because people, weren't predicting that Kroot would turn up and be serious. They thought it was a meme list. And I said at the very get-go when the Codex came out, the Kroot detachment is the most broken shit, and it's going to prove it. And then the one weekend after it was released, it was like, oh my God, Kroot's at an 80% win rate. Now, yes, it was just me. I think it's going 4-1. But then after the next couple of weeks, there was 2 Tau players playing Kroot, and it was still at an 80% win rate. So, it's unfortunate. We won't dwell on it, but the core rule changes did completely.
Well, I do. Who was re-racking Kroot carnivores? Who was that actually hurting? Who was actually that was their doom, right? I mean, re-racking gargoyles who then come down, shoot, and go straight into your face again. And essentially, it didn't matter that you killed the unit in front of you. There's another one there already. And then the other myriad of things that re-racking Kassakin was, of course, pretty toxic and things like that. But man, if anyone was allowed to have it, or just even twice a game, twice a game, Kroot. I was of the opinion what they should have done is made the CP usage double every time you've used it.
I actually said that as well. I actually said that any kind of regen unit should go up 1 CP for every per turn. So in turn 1 it's 1 CP, 2 CP, 3 CP, 4 CP. Yeah. Follow the turn number, something like that.
Well, I wanted it to be first one is 1 CP, second one's 2 CP, third one, piss off, 4 CP. And if you were willing to save up 4 CP, you can have a unit back. I think that's fair.
Agreed.
Yeah. But anyway, let's jump into some of the actual stuff, because you and me can do this on the regular and just wax lyrical. Current best archetype in your opinion? Current best build.
Best build. Okay, so you've got 3 different terrain sets at the moment: WTC, UKTC, and obviously the GW / also the front, well, 4 the frontline gaming fix. So
Yeah.
I'll try to generalize it. Most people are either playing on WTC or UKTC. We'll ignore GW for now because they have some similarities with UKTC. So I think Kion is king for UKTC.
Yep.
Because you've got more firing lanes. So the current builds that I've been running, I mean, my recent one is just a disgusting list, and I don't mind sharing it because I'm going to be doing some content on it anyway later this week. Was 2 Cadre Fireblades and Daddy Darkstrider, no enhancements. I had 2 Breacher Devilfish. I had a Pathfinder team, 3 units of 3 stealth suits, 3 Ion Riptides, 2 Ion Hammerheads, and 2 units of 2 broadsides. Now, when you look at that, you think, okay, he's taking Dakka guns. But I designed it very specifically to tackle the current meta, such as Blood Angels, Sisters, and any armies that are taking more battle line, because obviously missions are favoring battle line units now, or new secondaries, so they're taking more chaff, more trading pieces.
Yeah.
So I just decided to bring back Indirect because it's not killed for Tau, because the best we could ever hit on was 4s anyway. So correct. I put in the ignore modifiers on my broadsides, didn't take Seekers, took the rails, and took SMS. So just to break it down, my list has 49 SMS shots. 25 of them are ignoring modifiers. 37 in total are twin linked, and 12 of them are not twin linked because they're attached to a Devilfish. And that's before it kicks into turn 3. So with sustain hits 1, even if I'm split firing, I don't care. I'm just indirecting their battle line units, their trading pieces, their scoring pieces, and then God forbid I'm going into T3 Sisters with their big Seraphim unit or the Dominions. I kill an average of 10 to 13 Dominions a turn.
That's very nice. That is very cute. I like where you're going with that. I played against pretty much that exact same list, minus 1 hammerhead and the broadside. So it had one more hammerhead instead of the broadsides and a little bit more chaff. Like I think you had a unit of suits or something. And it was very scary.
Yeah, and people were looking at it going, oh, indirect, and then they weren't really respecting it. But then when it was in-game, it was like, oh, God, this is horrendous. And I think the other thing that really favours Kion being king is that with the meta currently, we're seeing a lot of, Blood Angels or it could even be World Eaters, lots of combat things because terrain is set up and then the aggression of the game is just right. Here's loads of stuff in your face. I'm going to get it done early, which people are going to do into Kion because they're fearing the turn 3. So Kion helps you deal with that with 2 particular stratagems. One of them, you can just jump back into your Devilfish with a stratagem. And the other one is you can make units -2 to charge and take a battle shock test. So that's the photon grenades and that's the combat embarkation. So that solves the problem of aggressive combat meta. So I feel that Kion is still king. But the other one I'd like to choose on the flip side is Montcar, specifically for WTC. And this could go into retaliation for the same reason, but it's slightly different. It needs a higher level of player or a higher skill cap with the retaliation. But
there's a lot. There's a way smaller room for error in retaliation cadre. Way smaller room for error. And what you're saying about Montcar being better on WTC is because the firing lanes are still there, but you've got to work to get them. They're all like 12 inches out of the deployment zone to get down the premium firing lanes. And so Assault is just chef's kiss, perfect for getting you there earlier.
Yeah. And I think the Montcar, I'm just going to kind of roughly say you could do, for example, if you just wanted to go staple list, you're talking 3 cadres, 3 breach. I think I've gone 3 breachers, 2 devilfish, 3 stealth, 3 times 3 stealth, which is obviously just auto include now with most Tau lists. You're going to have 3 riptides, and then you're going to have 3 ion hammerheads. And a Pathfinder team, and a couple, and you can put 3 piranhas and something like that. And that's just me off the top of my head.
Do you ever find, and I know this may not be a problem that you have specifically because you're a gun, but do you find there's Tau consternation on the fact that all your best Tau lists pretty much auto give up, bring it down, or they're very near to? Is it you finding that of any concern in the Tau community?
Absolutely not. No, because the way that I've been coaching and teaching Tau players is that to look at how Bring It Down has changed massively. So Bring It Down is no longer per model; it's you have to kill the whole unit. So just to give you 2 obvious ones, then if I had 2 devilfish, 3 riptides, 3 iron hammerheads, you're only giving away 2 for each of those. So that's like 4 for your Devilfish, 6 for your Riptides, and 6 for your Iron Hammerheads. Now, who the hell is killing all 3 Riptides? It's not going to happen. Iron Hammerheads are annoying, toughness 10, 14 wounds, so they're not easy to kill, and they have to really be overcommitted against to be removed. So actually, you're not giving away as many Bring It points as you did in the past. The other thing that's really interesting as well, and this is a tip for anybody listening in who's thinking about the retaliation, is that we're used to kind of putting loads of shield drones on everything we can. Now, if you had a unit of 3 crisis suits and you put a shield drone on each of them, they become 5 wounds each, which hits the caveat of, well, rather than going 2 wounds, it's 4 wounds, but they have to kill the whole unit. So if you just take a marker drone and a gun drone on the team leader, then that unit's total wounds is 14. So actually, they only give away 2 points. So that allows you to take the stuff that you want to take, but just being smart about the total number. And if you, on a list, only give away between, say, 24 and 28, bring it down, but then most of that is hidden within these tough, durable bodies like Riptides, maybe Ghost Keels, people aren't going to take Fixed. And the other problem with Fixed is that what the hell are you going to take of your second one? Locust is now trash. They stopped recover assets from being the fix because that was just going to become the new teleport homers.
It was. Yeah.
So, yeah, you're in a good place. So you can just actually smartly design lists and not have to fear bring it down.
Yeah, I love that you told everybody how to jank the wound numbers, because I think that's really, really important for the red cadre builds. Because if you just went unga bunga, chuck all the shield drones on everything, you actually can't get farmed. If you mess up, you actually can go and get farmed. But to your point, I think just Fixed is just so disincentivized now that like, unless you're an army that has 3-inch deep strike with innumerable small units and you can take engage or behind enemy lines, there isn't any other. And then people just play to stop like the quad engage. That you can get your triple engage for 2 points. Who cares? It's not a huge deal. It's not like dodging that isn't a huge deal. Anyway,
for those stat nerds out there that like numbers, and I know I love numbers, but over the weekend, for example, I did some data and stuff from my performance, and actually I achieved 195 points out of 200 for the secondaries out of 5 games. That's 97.5% of achieving secondaries because it's easy to do. So tactical, everybody took tactical against me. I took tactical against everyone, and most people did take tactical, and you can score very highly on it anyway. So Fixed is kind of dead in the water because tactical with the right list design is so easy to do.
Yeah, it's so much more reliable. All right, what are some units to watch in your mind? What are some units that might not be played en masse right now in Tower lists, but are sitting right on the fringe, and should the right meta come around, will absolutely take to the air?
So I think I'll answer this question from both the damage perspective, but also then utility. So I think Vespid are going to be something that the sneaky player will take because
tell people about this.
So the 65 points, okay. So they're just basically quite durable for the points as well. The T4, and they actually got a bad gun. The strength 5, 2 shots, AP 2, 2 damage. Right? What the hell? That's pretty good. They have movement 12 and they're infantry, so they can ignore terrain. But their key thing is that they can go up and down, but in a weird way. They come in and they go up at the end of your movement phase. So you can bring them down in your reinforcement step, block a rapid ingress, and then go up again.
It's so good.
Use that unit to be like, I really don't want 10 Vanguard vets rapid ingress and then coming in to smash my face. So here's a 65-point unit that just says nope.
Did you play in 6th and 7th edition when we had servo skulls? Like we actually had servo skulls, and they would block deep strike. That's what they feel like to me now. They feel like the closest thing we've had to the old servo skull. Because used to take an Inquisitor who could pretty much be taken by any freaking army in the game, and they would bring up the 3 servo skulls, and then you would deploy the servo skulls in no man's land on turn 1, and would throw out people's deep strikes, the jumps, and their drop pods and stuff like that. And that's what the Vest would feel like. They're such a unique tool. I really like them. Especially, I was looking at them and I was talking to some tower players about them when everyone was like, oh no, 30 warp talents are going to end the game. For that exact reason. So are you taking 1 unit to 5, 2 units to 10?
Yeah, I'd say like 1 unit for that trick is good enough. You can kind of go 2 because you can have one of them that's designed to do the blocking rapid ingress, and then the other one is designed to do early secondaries because it's going to help you with engaging on fronts. They're on tiny bases still because they haven't had a model refresh. They're on 25 mils. So engaging on fronts behind enemy lines, those secondaries that might force you to overcommit when you don't want to, just to get some points. You could even do a locust. You can use that 1 unit just to do those actions, and then obviously 1 unit to block rapid ingress. So 1 to 2, I'd say that minimum you kind of want to look at is 1, but that's utility pick. So I think that in itself is worth it, just from what we just described. In terms of damage and stuff like that, I think Skyrays are really interesting at the moment. Only Kion, though, in my opinion, because you can use the strat to coordinate to engage, so they can guide each other basically. And the Skyray is still cheap for what it does, and it's good at anti-tank. The AP3 can be a bit anemic, but it's still just reliable seeker missiles, killer missiles basically, but with D6+1 damage.
Well, I always thought of them as like twin-linked las cannons, but 2 more strength. And it's also the only issue I have with, I'm not sure you can take Riptides, Hammerheads, and Skyrays in the same army, because you get to a critical mass of hulls that you can't hide them, and you end up losing 2 or 3 of them just because you can't hide them all. What do you reckon's the number of hulls you can take and reliably hide on most tables?
Most tables, I'd say you're looking probably, because obviously if you just assume a Triptide is eternal, you're probably looking at four hulls, so like 2 Devilfish, 2 tanks, 2 like Hammerhead / Skyrays. You can obviously, look to strat reserve stuff, which is really kind of needed because you need to keep people honest. So if you were taking any more than that, you'd have to at least have, let's say if you had 3 Hammerheads and 2 Devilfish, you'd have to put 1 of them in reserve.
100%.
But in the most deployment zones, and I know it obviously will slightly differ, but from the test games I've had, 4 hulls, optimally, you can hide them, plus with the Riptides as well. But it can get a real kind of car park like problem if you take too much. The units, that's a really good question. I'd say that one thing that I'm really enjoying at the moment, and controversial, but is strike teams.
Really? I played against some on the weekend in Red Cadre, which I didn't think was quite the right home for him, but I'm happy to be told wrong.
They are right. They're perfect in Red Cad because they're just cheap OC2. And let me tell you why. So strike teams, they have a weird rule: suppression volley. If they hit you with a gun, you are -1 to your hit rolls. So that is -1 to hit in combat and shooting.
It's huge. It is huge. That did happen to me.
Pop. And you know what's really funny is they have a support turret that's never used ever. But if you're sitting strike teams on a home field, staying still, they could indirect with their 2 SMS shots. And if they hit you, you're -1 to hit, even though you're behind.
That is cute. That is really cute, actually. Especially in the mirror match, man. If you've got them and your opponent doesn't, that's huge.
Yeah, but it only works against enemy infantry.
Okay.
So you can't quite just go, I'm going to -1 hit on that tank. It's only infantry. But in this meta, people are taking fast, aggressive infantry units. So it can actually work out. And if you're in retaliation and you're making a dedicated combat unit like Vanguard Vets or something like that, or Death Company with -1 to hit, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, I agree. It is going to pay off. All right, we need to move on because I need to close this off pretty soon. What is the skill ceiling / floor of each of the best attachments, do you think?
Okay, so Kion, I think Kion is the skill floor. I mean, for me, I've been going 5-0 and 4-1 after this last one. So I think Kion, when if you just take my example, I've been playing the bloody faction for 24 years. That's where I've been landing, 5-0 and 4-1. But that's many, many years of just repeatedly playing the same army. So I'd say that like the rest of the town community is probably sitting on 3-2 with most, sometimes 2 and 3. But Kion definitely will help you in this current meta. And I'd say if you can practice, you could comfortably kind of win, RTTs, come quite high on small GTs. But then in like the super majors, you're probably looking at 4-1s as the best kind of thing. Now, I don't really like to focus on, as you know me, I don't really like to focus on like win rates, and not win rates, sorry, like performance-based targets, because over the last 3 or 4 super majors, I've just genuinely not cared about the pairings, not cared about any aspirations to go in X and O or whatever it is. I've just focused on what's in front of me and designed the list again around the meta. And I think that will help take the pressure off going to events anyway. So not that I'm saying that it's not good to look at like the skill cap, but for me, I'd say that if you focus on behaviors rather than the outcome will look after itself. So
I love that.
That's always been my take, even in business and stuff, and the jobs I've had previously. It was told to me by an angry Scotsman who was my area manager once, and I've never forgot it. Probably because he was shouting at me, but I never forgot it. So yeah, but in terms of Kion, I'd say that Montcar. Montcar's a little bit difficult. I'd say Montcar's probably your 3 and 2, maybe 4 and 1. Because if you have that bad first turn where nothing's being given to you, then you've wasted an entire turn of your damage. Which is why I think, in terms of people are sleeping on, is Piranha Rama. Piranhas, if you go 3-3-1, which some of my lists have got 3-3-1 in Montcar, you could just go, I'm always getting that first turn alpha. Bam. Yeah. And then you can go, 2 CP minus 1 damage to them.
Well, I agree. I think it's almost a mistake to build Montcar without some form of alpha strike. It's like 1/3 of your army bonus is just gone if you do nothing turn 1.
Exactly. So Pathfinders and Unit 3 Piranhas will definitely help you for that first turn in Montcar. So, yeah, and then obviously you've got the Retaliation. Now, the Retaliation is definitely one to, like you said before, you've got minimal errors. So you need to be a precision king. You need to be using those angles. You need to be really thinking about when to trade, how to trade, what to lose at what point, and looking for those perfect engagements. If you don't do this, you could quite comfortably go 0 and 5. You will score very highly, though. This is one thing I've noticed. There was last Super Major, not this one, the previous one. There was one Retaliation guy playing, and he scored one of the highest battle points, but lost 2 games. But he had more battle points, and these games were so close. So I think Retaliation is definitely one for the undecided player in terms of which way to go counter Montcar. But if you love tactically figuring out puzzles and positioning and stuff, that detachment is beautiful. So I think the Retaliation at the moment has possibly the highest risk but the highest reward. And I found that Retaliation allows you to actually not give a crap about people putting you under pressure, because watching people try and screen out 3-inch deep strikes, and you can be the person to dictate when the engagement happens, that is super powerful for Tau in an unknown territory, because we're used to either going full send and it bouncing, or working and the game's done. Kion simply rushes you and it's done, or you've been able to weather through the storm and then blast them off the planet from turn 3 onwards. But Retaliation, you can just end a game in one fell swoop if done correctly. And you've got the power of the engagement and when to put the pressure on. I think that is beautiful. And I'd say that one, if you can crack it and practice with it, that one's the top detachment that I've got my eyes on, put it that way.
All right. Into our rating system, where do you see Tau at the moment, S tier to D tier?
Okay, so I'd probably say they're probably somewhere in A tier. The thing that always holds us back is, I suppose, the different levels of players playing them. You know, everything. I suppose that could be said about any faction, really. But I think Tau in the hands of the right general could definitely be like top-ish A tier, because there's so many builds. And the reason Tau, in my opinion, are always kind of like around the A tier, or sometimes sneak into S tier, but then get nerfed into oblivion, because I've never seen a faction be able to adapt so quickly to what the meta evolves to, if that makes sense. Because, for example, everybody's going loads of marine bodies with jump packs. Okay, well, I'll just take loads of breaches and devilfish, or loads of indirect, or, everyone's gone monster heavy or tank heavy. Well, guess what? I'm going to bring out broadsides, hammerheads, railguns, all that kind of stuff. And you've got so many tools that when you're presented a problem, you can just problem solve and insert units and utility. So I don't know of another faction that can do that as well as Tau. So for me, they are super strong as a utility kit going into unknown metas. and then when it gets established, you can then just adjust and then change your list again. So I just love it. I think they're A tier. What about you, mate?
I think they are one of the higher A tier armies. I don't think I'm not sure there's an A plus. We might need to have an A minus, A plus, because I actually think there's probably 8 lists, 8 factions in the A tier at the moment. I'd put them as one of the top 3 probably in the A tier.
Yeah,
probably kicking around with GKs and T Suns around in the mix there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think they're exceptional. I think they're really good. They've got some of the best utility units in the game. Actually, I still think the Breacher is top 5 battle line in the game. I think they're so freaking good. And I'm really happy to hear that the Strikes are making a bit of a comeback as well for some utility.
All they need to do to Strikes to make them, compete with Breachers is to give them AP1.
Yeah.
If you give them AP1, then I think that solves a lot of problems. I know there's Armor Contempt, but then with certain detachments, you can up the AP. Even in Khan, if you're within 9, you can up the AP. In Montcar, you can do the Focus Fire one to give them AP. And suddenly they're all right for 75 points. But they're just always on that cusp. And let's not forget, I know we've not mentioned it, but also one of the units that you asked me before, Ghost Kills, man. I absolutely fucking love them, and I'm working on getting them back. Triple Ghost Kill was so much fun.
It's obnoxious. I think Ghost Kills are absolutely obnoxious. Their damage is it's mid. This damage is mid. Can be very good in some matchups, but the fact that they're the most durable line-up in the game, that statement cannot be a bad thing in Pariah Nexus missions when line-ups are so strong.
Yep.
So, yeah, 100%. On that note, man, we're going to have to wrap up and head over and record part 2. Anything you should definitely plug your wares, my dude, because you are running a business and you're like me, kicking around, trying to make a living out of this here game and doing our thing. So tell us about the Pure Tide Engram chip.
Yeah, we did there, the Grundy chip. So I run a business, Pure Tide Program. I'm obviously on YouTube as well, but that's not where the magic happens. The magic happens over in my Discord, and what I basically focus on is teaching not just here's my Tau list and stuff like that. I focus very much, like you heard me say, about behaviors, helping you achieve goals through think about what actions you're doing. Why are you doing this? Could you have done something different? How can you improve your scores? Your scores are a story that you are showing me through, what behaviors you're doing, what maybe behaviors you're not doing. So I very much focus on doing live classes. An audience can join my Discord at 4 different levels. The free one, which obviously is just the community side of things. Then you've got the Pathfinder, the Shaspray, and the Chassel. The Chassels is for your highly competitive tournament goers that just really want to kind of rank up those ITC points and get inside my brain, literally get inside my brain. The Shaspray gives you a mixture of like list building, crafting workshops where we talk about the why rather than just here's my winning list and go and run it. It doesn't work that way. Everybody can pick up a list online, but if you don't understand the why and how to use it, it's pointless. So the Shaspray gives things like Quiz the Commander and the list building calls where you can quiz me about anything 40k, and then I'll bring your list to me and I will basically list doctor the hell out of it and talk to you about why. And then the Pathfinder one gives you demonstration days, and I go on to like TTS, and I do this for all the faction or all the tiers as well. The demonstration day is one where I'll use TTS, and I'll just basically say, look guys, I'm going to show you something rather than just talk to you. I want to show and tell. And then the Chassels, we analyze everything from meta, tournaments, the whole lot. So you can check out the WAP website. I'll send a link here. You can join at your own disposal. You can go to the free community, and then if you want to message me, it's perfect. But for me, my business is purely just teaching you the why, and that's the short summary. It's the why part, and I love to engage with an audience rather than just type. I like to interact with people. I want to hear about their journeys, and my business has grown over the last year because of that, and it's something unique and different in the market. And I wish more faction specialists did this because, trust me, there is definitely a market for it. And people just love their faction and want to do good with it.
I adore how you go about it, mate. I think you're doing it really, really well. And you're showing us all how it's done. So please go over and get some Grundy chip in your brain. It's going to be called the Grundy chip. There's going to be a tier called the Grundy chip. All right. So we're done. That's it. That's 4 segments of around about 25 minutes each. And hopefully you've enjoyed that state of the Xenos Superfaction episode for your viewing pleasure. Please come over and join us over on part 2. Once again, the outro has been replaced by a beautiful song by my brother's band. This one is We Can't Win, which is about, if I remember right, it's about kind of watching people close to you go through really hard times and finding a way to dig through the proverbial. And there is some swearing, so, you know, content warning there, but hopefully you'll enjoy the song. Hopefully you'll stick around for it, and hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Kyle, you've been an absolute gent, as you always are. Can't wait to race a glass with you in a couple of weeks in Belgium. It's going to be a mad time, and the coverage of WTC is going to be thick and fast from here on out. So let us just kick back and enjoy, my dude. And I'm sure you're working your ass off, though. The prep just began. Like the prep for WTC
now. It's probably phase two. Phase two.
Yeah, phase two. DEFCON, whatever. Anyway, we're out of here. We're out of here. We'll go to record part 2. Join us there. Love you all. See you later.
Bye.